Hey everybody, a friendly reminder that the early draft of the project is due this week. Let's take a look at where to find the instructions, and then we'll talk about how to submit it. Log into eCampus and click on Course Content. And then under Project, you'll see the Study Guide, Project Guidelines, and Rubric. This is where you'll find the instructions for this project. So remember, a learning guide is like a study guide. There are just a couple extra things that you're going to have to do to meet the criteria for this project. So let's take a look here at the project checklist, and then we'll look at the criteria for success. So under the project checklist, this submission is related to the early draft, and there are two parts. The first is going to be your personal learning guide, and it should include citations. The next part of this is a group draft that you create by working together. That's going to be the group learning guide. There'll be an authorship page that lets everyone know who did what part of the project, and a citation page. Let's take a look at the criteria for success here. So this is the rubric that will be used to grade each of the submissions for this project. The points available that are shown here are for the final, and I'm just going to adjust the points for this early draft submission so that the total worth of the early draft is 25 points. But you want to make sure to meet each of these requirements. So make sure you've identified main concepts for each of the topics. Make sure you can make connections amongst the topics, because the topics that we talk about in Bio 115 are related to each other. You should provide at least one example per major concept. Do provide sample problems or sample questions. You can use these from the textbook, your professor, any other source. You want to include sketches or diagrams. What this project is not, it is not that you just cut and paste something from your Bio 115 projector slides or handouts. That defeats the purpose of the project. You need to create the material that you are using. And the other important thing I want to highlight here is that you are integrating information from all the group members. This should not just be that each person did a different topic and you shoved it all together, because that defeats the purpose of working together. And then a couple other things here related to just format. If you're going to use color, make sure it makes sense. Make sure there's enough white space to be able to read things. And then there's a section here that talks about how to make citations and a reference page for anything that didn't come from your lecture professor. And again, remember to put an authorship page to tell me who did the work. So let's look really quickly at the project grading scheme. This is where we are, the early draft. That's the grade that your group is going to earn for the draft, 25 points, like I mentioned earlier. And then the other part that you are working on is part of your individual learning guide. You're doing your early individual draft, which is worth 5 points. Right, so further down the document, there is suggested roles for group members, and then it just tells you that you need to include an authorship page. So just tell me who did the work for the draft that you're submitting this week. Finally, there's a citation guide that you should use so that you can be consistent when you are citing sources. There are two parts: in text, like you see here, right? I am citing a source there. So there's my in-text citation letting you know that I'm using information from another source. And then a reference page. I was in a hurry here, so rather than have a reference page, I just have this part here. But that's the two main parts. If you have more questions, just check out the frequently asked questions part of this document. So that should be everything you need to know for what you need to turn in. There's no required format. Here are some examples, and we'll talk about submission and format in the video that talks about how to submit this project. All right, hopefully this is helpful for you guys.